Everyone is in the meeting now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to this meeting of the Waverley Local Planning Panel for the 23rd of November 2022 and start by introducing the members of today's panel. My name is Paul Steen, I'm the chair. The expert members are Ms. Annalise Tour and Mr. Peter Brennan, and the community member is Ms. Sandra Robinson. I asked the members of the panel to disclose any conflicts of interest they have in relation to each and every item on the agenda today. I have none.
Annalise Tour, no conflict of interest.
I have no conflict of interest.
I have a conflict of interest in relation to 8282 Hall Street, Bondi Beach, as I've worked on the original DA for the building that's under construction for the current landowner. Right.
So you will absent yourself from that matter. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that can be noted. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll start in on the agenda straight away. It's fairly long, so I'd ask people to remember that they have a maximum of 3 minutes. The first item on the agenda is 105 Hewlett Street, Bronte, and the first speaker I have is Mr. George Caravanis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For the record, the planner on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. I am indeed the planner on behalf of the applicant, and I do have the applicant here with me.
Yes.
Tom Williams, who will be available to answer any questions. I only want to say a few quick things, and that is that...
Before you get started, I wanted to draw something to your attention, which you may or may not know about. Very recently, the Court of Appeal gave a decision that really puts an end to the system that had existed for many years in relation to retrospective consents and approvals, and it does affect this modification and indeed modifications right throughout the state. So I don't know if you're aware of the decision.
I was sort of aware of it. The issue that we initially submitted a BIC in order to deal with these works, because the works had already been done, and that's included in the council officer's report, and we're advised by the council itself to submit a section 4.5 instead.
Well, you're right that the BIC can be looked at, the Building Information Certificate, but I'm not quite sure whether or not in the meantime we have to defer the mod. I mean, it's a difficult situation and not of your making or anybody else's, but of the court. So do you have anything to say to that, Mr. Caravanis?
Not other than, I mean, I certainly won't go up against the Court of Appeal in terms of its findings, particularly as a humble town planner. All I can say is, as I said, we've just followed the process that was instructed to us by council. That being the case, and if we have to, if the panel is of the view that the panel does not have the power to determine the application, then we'll have to go back and do a BIC. It's just a shame that it's such a long waste of time.
Well, we'll have to give that consideration, and it may be the situation that we'll have to defer to the BIC. But if you have anything to say about that issue, this is a good time to say it.
Other than, I mean, as I said, I'm not a lawyer, and I certainly won't provide any legal opinion, nor do I have belief for that anyway. All I can say is I just want to speak to the changes, if I may,
yes.
And just advise the panel what the key changes are and what the consequences of those changes are.
Yeah.
And they are basically, as illustrated in the council officer's report, there are minor changes to the setbacks, and these are immaterial in my view, between 85 millimetres and 138 millimetres. There is an additional storage area in the basement of about 36 square metres, some internal changes, change to the finished floor levels, the leach into a planter box on the first floor, a reduction in the pool length, and a very minor increase to the roof apex of 0.211 metres towards the centre of the building. You may be aware that these changes have happened as a result of a series of events during the construction phase, where when the building was demolished, asbestos was found in the foundations and the civil engineers required to go deeper into the rock. And that's how the basement storage area was found. And as a result, also the levels changed. Notwithstanding the consequential levels change internally, the envelope hasn't changed in any material way, as indicated in the council officer's report. And for those reasons, the increases both in height and FSR, in my opinion, are immaterial. In terms of impacts and preservation of amenity is still maintained. You'll see in the council officer's report on pages 20 to 22 that there isn't any view impact resulting from these. In fact, there is a view gain from the removal of the plant and reduction in the pool. So from a merit, or at least a planning point of view, we are of the opinion that these changes do not give rise to any significant environmental planning issues, and certainly preserve amenity. As to whether the panel is empowered to determine the 455, I have very capable panel members on this panel, and as I said, I certainly wouldn't argue against the Court of Appeal decision.
Thank you, Mr. Caravanis. Does any member of the panel have a question for Mr. Caravanis?
I've got one question. Your modification application, does it propose works that haven't been constructed as well as works that have been constructed?
As I understand, it's only works that have been constructed.
And the roof has not been constructed.
I'm sorry, the roof has not been constructed. That's right. Yes.
So potentially, taking the Court of Appeals line, it would be the roof that would be something that would be
correct,
able to be approved,
and perhaps the storage area, because that relates to a use as well.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Caravanis. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. Thank you very much, and thank you to Mr. Williams. Okay, we move to 16A and 16B, Landaff Street, Bondi Junction. There's one speaker, Mr. Lee Cosnetta.
Afternoon, Chair.
Hello, Mr. Cosnetta. You're the applicant's planner?
Yes, I am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank the officers Peggy Wong and Bridget McNamara for a comprehensive report. I agree with the recommendations to approve the modifications and accept all of the recommended conditions in the report. The main motivation for this application is to align the DA drawings with CC realistic outcomes on the site. The CC drawings are now developed to the point where they're compliant with the new Class 2 building regulations, and discrepancies between DA plans and CC plans are no longer tolerated on the planning portal. The other aspect of the modification relates to the provision of a communal rooftop terrace. The report accepts that these elements and those above the height plane are warranted in this particular case, and that the terrace provides additional amenity to the building without any adverse impacts on surrounding buildings. The plans before you today were amended during the assessment process to refine details as requested by Ms. Wong, following technical internal reviews and also commentary from the Design Excellence Advisory Panel, who were supportive of the proposal. Effectively, there are three types of conditions being recommended for amendment. Condition 2 of the original consent is to be deleted in acknowledgement that the general modifications required to the plans are packaged up and satisfied in this application. Condition 93 is a clean-up of the car parking allocation to lower the numbers in accordance with what we have proposed. And there are 5 pages worth of new stormwater conditions that reflect Council's recently updated approach to stormwater. Our engineers have reviewed those and I've been informed that we are able to comply with all of them. We therefore accept all of the conditions recommended, and with nothing further to add, I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Gosnetta. If any member of the panel has a question for Mr. Gosnetta, now's the time to ask it. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this matter and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. We'll move on then to further down Landulph Street, number 51. And the first speaker I have is Alan Lakeman. Is he present? Alan Lakeman? Not present? I can see him on my list.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I just had trouble demuting the microphone. Can you hear me now?
My sympathy goes out to you.
I've also appeared to be upside down as well, so I apologise.
Never mind. I don't mind whether you're sideways, upside down, or.
Yes, I did try and get a neutral background unsuccessfully. Look, anyway, my name's Alan Lakeman. I'm the owner of 176 Ebley Street, Bondi Junction, which is the property that is directly to the south of the subject development. I purchased the property in 1990, which is 32 years ago, and I just wish to raise 6 points in relation to the development. The first is privacy and quiet enjoyment. There are 9 units in the block that I own. Over the last 32 years, we've formed very good relationship with our tenants, and many have been there for many years, and we want their privacy and quiet enjoyment protected. Now, the second point that I wish to raise is the history of the property and the use of the property at 51 Landulph Street. It has had a history of being used as a boarding house type accommodation. And this has caused a lot of problems for our tenants and for other neighbours with noise. And there was an outdoor pool at one stage that caused all sorts of problems as well. So in addressing this development, we want to ensure that it's not used as an unauthorised boarding house or an Airbnb or any sort of development like that. Now, the third point is the raising of the ground level of the property by about 1/3 of a metre. Now, there are serious water issues in relation to our property. We get a lot of runoff,
I seem to have lost you, Mr. Lakeman. You were telling us about, can you hear me? Mr. Lakeman, can you hear me? He appears to be having a problem.
He's still talking. I can.
Yeah, but we can't hear.
We can't
You're
hear.
muted, I think. Unmute.
He's not muted. It may be an issue with his computer and his.
Mr. Lakeman, can you hear me?
It doesn't appear as if he can hear you. Maybe Rosalina needs to give him a ring.
Can you try that, Rosalina, to ring him up?
Yes, I'll call him now.
Tell him that he lost the power of speech.
Sorry, that was the internet connection. I'm not sure how many of those 6 points you got.
I got through to the third of the 6 points, and then we didn't hear anything after that.
I'm sorry, I was
Don't
actually looking at my notes rather than the screen. The fourth point was just the overshadowing and the existing timber fence along the back of the property. It's a 1.6 metre fence. The swimming pool should be stepped back in, and no new fence should be put along the back of the fence that's higher than the existing one, and any new fence should be moved back into the development site. The fifth issue was an access problem. The development covers most of the property, and the rain tanks are the only access, cover the only access on the either side of the townhouse, so we feel there will be an access point. The sixth point was a dilapidation report. We feel that a dilapidation report should be carried out before any work, particularly on the swimming pool, is commenced, because that will be obviously excavated, as it appears to be an indoor pool, in-ground pool rather than an external pool, and we feel that a dilapidation report should be prepared, noting any if there are any defects, so that we don't get into an argument at the end of the development as to who's caused what.
Okay.
If I can just recap, point number one was privacy and quiet enjoyment. Point number two was the history of the boarding house type accommodation and the disruption to the quiet enjoyment of our tenants. The third point was the water runoff and the 1/3 metre elevation of the site, and there were retention tanks on our boundary. The fourth point was the overshadowing and the swimming pool, and the construction of a further fence, and the fact that the swimming pool is not 900 in from the boundary. The fifth point was the access problem, and the sixth point was the dilapidation report.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. I apologise for the problem I'm having with the internet.
It happens to all of us. Thank you, Mr. Lakeman. Does the panel have any questions for this gentleman?
No, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lakeman.
Thank you, Mr. Stein.
So the next speaker I have is David Waghorn from Planning Ingenuity. Is he present? David Waghorn?
I am, Mr. Chair. I'm here representing the applicant. So if there are any other objectors, we might be better hearing from them.
Well, I don't have any in my list of speakers.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Mr. Waghorn.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair and panel. I will be brief. Basically, we would like to thank council staff Kylie Lucas and Bridget McNamara for going on this journey with us, and it was a rather conciliatory process, and we've got to an outcome which we completely agree with and we are happy with. We note some of the submissions raised by the objector just then. We think the council assessment report has dealt with all those issues. So I don't think there's any need to really respond to those in any great detail, but I can if you would have any specific questions.
All right, it's up to you.
Well, look, I'll just go over them quickly then. My understanding is the issues are privacy. I think the first floor level balcony and second floor level balconies are separated by about 9 metres to the rear property. I think that is a sufficient separation for a dwelling house. In relation to the historic boarding house use, there was a consent granted, but that consent was never enacted and has lapsed. It is and has been a dwelling house for many a year, and there is no intention of making it other than its proposed use as being semi-detached dwellings. The third issue was, I think, groundwater or ground levels. I don't think ground levels are changing. If they are, it'd be minor, and it would be something that would be covered under exempt development anyway. And the water levels are satisfied, and the OSD is satisfied via council's conditions and our civil plans. The overshadowing, as per the report, it is unfortunate. It's a north-south orientation, so there will be some additional shadowing, but just noting that this building is about 1.9 metres below the height limit. It, once subdivided, is well below the FSR, and as noted in the report, complies with the setback controls. So it is an envelope that is generally anticipated, and we would say any overshadowing is an inevitable consequence of a compliant form. Dilapidation report, I recall there was a condition in
I think it almost certainly is a condition, but we can check on that.
If there's not, the client would be happy to accept it.
Yep. Right.
Other than that, we agree with the assessment report. We agree with the conclusions. We agree with the conditions, including the deferred commencement conditions, and we commend the report to council, to the panel. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Waghorn. Are there any questions of Mr. Waghorn from the panel?
Just in terms of the deferred commencement condition, I'm not sure if you're the best person to answer it or the architect. So you're confident that you understand what to do and that the need for a more compatible end result that's consistent with the heritage conservation area?
Yes, we are. I've spoken to the architect. We do have them online, but I have spoken to them. We do note it is a conservation area. We do note that they are predominantly heritage concerns, and the report does show a sketch of, I think, the intent of Council's heritage officer, which I think we can follow.
Okay. Mr. Lakeman, I should point out that you have one thing in common. Sorry, Mr. Waghorn. You have one thing in common with Mr. Lakeman. You're upside down too. So don't worry about it. If you're standing on your head, then good luck to you.
I've had worse things, Chair. So
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So does the panel wish to hear from the architect, Mr. Dimopoulos, who's available if we want?
No.
Okay, well, thank you for making yourself available. So we'll move on. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. That brings us to 79 Wellington Street, Bondi Beach, and Mr. Lee Cosnetta again.
Thank you, Chair.
You're the planner for the applicant.
I am, yes. Thank you again, Chair, and along with Mr. Waghorn, I want to thank the same officers, Kylie Lucas and Bridget McNamara again, another comprehensive report. I agree with the recommendations to approve the modification application. There are effectively 3 conditions recommended. Condition 3K, that seeks to reduce the rooftop terraces to 15 square metres. I acknowledge this condition is in response to a number of objections that were raised during the notification period, and also reflects strict compliance with the DCP maximum size of roof terraces controls, and we accept this condition. Condition 54 seeks to adjust the car parking allocated to affordable housing as we had proposed, and we accept this condition. And condition 5A, which seeks a requirement for the 2 additional affordable housing units proposed as part of this application to be retained for a period of 15 years. Today, I seek the panel's correction of condition 5A. Last week, I provided a chronology of the changes to the legislation to council officers to demonstrate that the relevant housing step mandates a retention period of 10 years rather than 15. I understand you've been provided with an addendum report confirming this.
Yes.
So as per that note, the correction can be facilitated by removing condition 5A altogether and instead modifying condition 5 to add units A103 and A104 to the list. Subject to that correction, I have nothing further to add and I'm available for any questions. I understand the architect is online as well if required.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Cosnetta from the panel?
No, Mr. Chair.
No.
I've just got quickly one question. So previously the rooftop terraces that are now becoming private open space, were they part of the communal, were they used before as rooftop open space communally, or were they just non-trafficable?
No, there was one approved roof terrace to the corner of the building on the southwestern corner to the unit at the uppermost floor. That was the only private rooftop terrace approved with the original development, and there were no other rooftop amenities. These are additional rooftop terraces for private amenity. We had originally conceived some communal rooftop terrace areas in a very early revision of this application, and we were discouraged from doing that in this particular case.
So all of the roof prior to this application was just non-trafficable except for the one at the southwest corner?
That's correct.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Cosnetta?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta. I think you said that your architect was available. Is that right?
They're available if there's any architecturally related questions, but they don't necessarily have anything to add.
Ask the panel whether or not they wish to hear from the architect.
No.
On the panel wish to hear from the architect. I think I'm getting a negative. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. That brings us to 80 to 82 Hall Street, Bondi Beach, and I think Miss Robinson, if you'll absent yourself for this matter and come back for 24 Jensen Street. Thank you. A number of speakers are registered to speak. The first one I have is Alex Unsworth.
Hi there. Have you hearing me okay?
Yes, we are. And you're from 15 Cox Avenue.
15 Cox Avenue, so approximately 200 metres away from the development, just around the corner of Cox Avenue.
Yes.
So I've just got a couple of things I'd like to sort of communicate with the committee. So I'm not opposed to gyms at all, and not opposed to even boxing gyms. I just want to talk about some procedural issues, re the traffic study and the acoustic study. And I just want to talk about some clarifications and recommendations, re the conditions of consent. So just to remind the committee, there were 27 objections, all from nearby properties to this development, not to the development, sorry, to this application. And there was a petition of 31 locals. There was 9 submissions in support, but none of those were from nearby properties. The address is Hall Street, but 75% of the frontage wraps around into Cox Avenue, which is a quiet residential street, semi-detached houses, families, older people who've lived there for 40 plus years, and so forth.
Mr. Unsworth, I hesitate to interrupt you, but I just want to remind you that you've only got 3 minutes, so you need to go a little bit faster, otherwise I'll have to chop you off in the middle of your speech.
That's okay, Paul. So look, the original traffic study was defective. It referred to Canada Bay and completely omitted Cox Avenue, and the acoustic study was similarly defective. So my questions are, number one, the updated traffic study, which I assume the committee has used to form its opinion, can you confirm that that does not need to be shared with the public, given that the original traffic study was defective?
I'm not here to answer questions, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, okay. My observation is that it's odd, given the original traffic study was defective, that the public doesn't get an opportunity to see the second traffic study. I don't know how the procedures work, but that's obviously a quirk of it. And the second thing is really the acoustics is the same thing. Again, there's a new acoustic study, but we've not had the opportunity to see that, and obviously noise is a big issue for everybody. And then just the third thing is just on the conditions of consent, just from a practical perspective, how the noise complaints would actually be dealt with over the 1-year trial period. Will they be received by the gym or by the council, and will a register be kept, and how will that be sort of managed? The report talks to a report that will be commissioned later after a year within 60 days. Who commissions that? Is it the council or the gym, and who pays for that? And will that be commissioned back to the original contractor that did the acoustic study, in which case there's possibly a conflict there. So I'm not sure the conditions of consent are necessarily enforceable, nor do they actually help with the sort of real issue of the noise. I don't know whether I've got any more time or whether we have a discussion here or how this works, but
no, we're not here to have a discussion, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
How long would you think you need to finish off?
Well, I was just going to, so just a quote that it is a boxing gym. On the website of the gym called Rumble, on the first page, they talk about the vibes, which is with a megawatt sound system and custom playlists available only at Rumble, the room collectively thumps to old school and new school beats, while the music will help you smash, etc., etc. So the noise thing is not just the standard kind of NIMBY noise issue. I think there's a very specific concern about noise with this specific brand of gym that we need to think about in the conditions of consent and how we'll actually manage the conditions of consent going forwards, if indeed the gym lives up to its adverts and, you know, does produce that kind of noise.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Unsworth. Does the panel have any questions for Mr. Unsworth, please?
Thank you for letting us address you.
Thank you, Mr. Unsworth. We come to the next speaker, who is Ben Peacock. Is he present? I can see him in the list. Ben Peacock.
I am, thank you.
Hello, and you're from 41 Cox Avenue, Mr. Peacock.
That's correct, I am.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'd like to discuss street safety today. As Alex said, we're a street with a significant number of residents over 70, some are over 80, and we've got 2 over 90. There's at least a dozen children, and there's a few dogs. If you come look at the street after dark, people walk on the street, which in winter is quite early, obviously, especially females, because the footpaths have got a lot of trees on them and can be very dark. People find it safer. They feel safer in the street. So as a street, we accept we live close to restaurants, yoga studio, the like. Our opposition is not to the gym per se, but the increase in traffic pressure and therefore safety without council putting in any mitigating factors. This has been growing over the last decade and nothing's really been done to mitigate it. If I tell you a brief story, I was out there with the kids about 2 weeks ago. With about 4 of the kids, and they're messing around, and then someone came racing up the road, and I kind of got the kids away from the street, and I said, hey mate, could you slow down please? And he said, oh, I wasn't going very fast. And I said, look, you were going pretty quick. No, I wasn't. And one of the kids said, yes, you were. And he said, you want me to get out and punch you? To a 13-year-old. That's literally the response. And we get that sort of response over and over again. Why does it happen? Because people are in a rush. We get the tradies, we get delivery drivers, Ubers, and people running late to their gym or yoga class. The latter is probably the worst, because when they find there's no parking, which is regular at peak times, they're now late and they speed out again. It's a 50-kilometre zone, which is quite ridiculous. We've suggested to the council over and over and again, it should be a 10-kilometre shared zone, but no response has been given. The entry from Lamrock is about a 45-degree angle, which makes it very easy to speed around that corner, and people do. We've put up signs saying, please slow down, children playing. They've made no difference. So our concern is a complete lack of consideration of the submission and ruling with regard to traffic. It's been pretty much overlooked. In fact, both the submission and the ruling say it's likely the gym will be frequented by locals, a local clientele who may walk or cycle to the studio. I can see no evidence to support this. It's certainly not my lived experience. If you sit in the street in the morning, you will see a conga line of people with yoga mats. And now we'll be adding to that people with boxing gloves. So again, not particularly against a gym. I think gyms are great. I like boxing myself. My question is, since council intends to improve a development that puts even more pressure on the street than it already has, what is council going to do to measure, understand and mitigate this increased traffic flows and speed and the safety concerns that it creates on Cox Avenue? Because it appeared to be nothing in the conditions of approval that require anything of this measure. And therefore, there appears to be absolutely no concern from council at all for the safety of people, old, young, dogs, visitors in the street. In my opinion, it's only a matter of time before a child or an elderly resident is hit by a visitor in a hurry. And I'd hate that to be the outcome of from I'd love to see some mitigation put on it. from the council or some sort of a plan, both for this development and future ones that will no doubt be approved as well.
Thank you, Mr. Peacock. Are there any questions from the members of the panel to this gentleman?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Peacock. The next speaker I have is Sasha Thompson. Is that person present?
Oh, sorry, is that Sasha you're asking for?
Yes.
Sorry, Sasha's pulled out. She's keen for John to take the third spot, John Cahill.
Okay, so but will she be able to speak after John Cahill?
No, she doesn't want to. She's too shy to address the committee. Sorry.
I understand that. So,
Okay.
Mr. John Cahill, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
A little louder, please.
Excuse me, I'll just have a glass of water. Yes, look, I want to take the opportunity to thank the panel for giving me the right to speak on this subject. I might say at the outset, I'm just up from the building at 14 Cox Avenue, and I've been living in Cox Avenue for over 42 years. The other point I want to make, I'm familiar with gymnasiums. I've been a regular user of a gymnasium for many, many years. And that's at North Bondi Surf Life Saving Club. So I'm familiar with the hours of operation and where the demand occurs in relation to a gymnasium. It's pretty well before working hours and after working hours. Now, the point I want to make is that in relation to this proposal, the history of this area, there's never been a proposal like this in proximity to the dwellings in Cox Avenue. There's no history of it, either at 80 or 82 Hall Street or the building across on the corner of O'Brien and Cox Avenue, which is 1416 O'Brien Street. Now, the building itself, or where the proposed gymnasium is going to be located on the front of the building, the front of the ground floor faces Hall Street. There's a door and windows. And as earlier pointed out, a substantial part of the building extends into Cox Avenue. Now, at the side of the building, there's double fronted or double folding doors. In fact, it's so wide, it looks like triple. I'm not sure on that, but it's, and clearly they're designed to be opened up. Now, where they face is into the cul-de-sac, the green space, I'll call it, where prior to this construction of this development, people used to sit, chat, and rest. And that point is made out in my written submissions, which I take it before the panel.
We have. And Mr. Carl, I have to tell you that you're almost out of time, so I'd like you to finish up, please.
Oh, yeah, so I'll just say that the backing onto the building is residential dwellings. Across from the building where the double folding doors extend out to, that is a residential apartment dwellings. So they'll be looking into that. And of course, the noise, which has already been pointed out. The legal access, as already pointed out, comes into Cox Avenue. The parking restrictions are dealt with in the written submissions. And the effect of all this is set out in the 5th paragraph of the submissions. I'll just, given the time limit, I'll just finish on the point that if weight is given to the residents' objections, which have been many, to the DA, then it shouldn't be approved, this kind of proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. Does the panel have any questions for Mr. Carl?
No, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Carl. Appreciate your submission. The next speaker I have is Leanne Doan.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am one of the co-owners of Rumble Boxing Bondi Beach.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing all your concerns. I can't speak to traffic noise. I think it was all addressed in the reports. We actually undertook 2 reports to ensure that we addressed it in the right ways. And I think the outcome of that demonstrates that it was sufficient. But what's really important for me to address right now, just because we do have 3 people, part of the community, opposing our application, the concerns you have are our concerns as well. We know that there's the street residential, but Rumble Boxing is for everyone. I'm a mother of 2. It's a franchise that's coming over from New York, and it's designed to be incredibly inclusive, not encouraging any violence whatsoever. The concerns you have about noise, I hear you, and we want to build custom studio to ensure that we insulate the sound, and without knowing what the studio is going to look like. If you imagine the premise, you're right, there is a lot of windows. They will be closed at all times because within the studio and the premise, we're building a state-of-the-art studio within that. Will be insulated where the bags will hang and the benches. The windows on Cox Avenue will never be open because that's where the studio is going to be, where the class will actually happen and occur. So that won't be open at any time. So there won't be any noise escaping there whatsoever. In terms of the residents on the streets, the last thing we want is for people to race down the street, harm children in any way. I think we're all in agreement and alignment there. That's just basic community behavior that we all would agree with, right? And while we can't control the individuals, what the report does demonstrate is during those peak hours, there's space at Hub along the street for people to park. Of all the members that we have over 100 members. We know where they live. In talking to them, we know that they're walking to the studio or riding a bike. The desire for us to open in Bondi is because it adds to the local component of it where people can walk. Right now, the only boxing gyms that exist that encourages women, men, all walks of life is in Potts Point. People want to be able to walk and commute freely, walk down to their local gym and work out like they do all the other gyms there. There's gyms, Rumble's just open in St. Leonard's. There's one going to be open in Melbourne and Brisbane. What we're doing is a really state-of-the-art gymnasium where the perception you have, what you see on the website doesn't represent a fair picture of it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stone. Any questions from the members of the panel to Ms. Stone?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Stone.
Thank you.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will adjourn and consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. Thank you for your submission and the other submitters too. Could Ms. Robinson please come back so we can continue the meeting? Rosalina, can you tell Ms. Robinson to come back in?
I'm back.
Oh, good. We come to 24 Jensen Avenue, Vaucluse. And the first speaker I have is Mr. Charles Cosgrove.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just confirming, can everyone hear me loud and clear?
We can see you and you're not upside down. So
excellent. Okay, we're off to a good start, and I hope the rest of my presentation doesn't result in everything turning upside down.
Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Where are you?
Good afternoon,
Mr. Cosgrove.
So my parents own the property at 22 Jensen Avenue, which is the other side of the semi-detached dwelling, as the panel would know only so well. I lived there for 26 years, and obviously have an intimate understanding of the property and the nature of the dwelling. So I first like to start by thanking the council members, Mr. Wilmot and Mr. Magistrale, for their work in respect to this matter. This is short and sharp. I'd just like to note that we fully support the comments contained in the report, and we embrace the recommendations from Mr. Wilmot and Mr. Magistrale. This demolition, speaking from someone who's lived at the property for a long time and also with a background of property myself, I'd like to note that the demolition could seriously affect the structure of 22 Jensen Avenue, Vaucluse. The two buildings share the same roof and the same party wall, which is a supporting wall for the two properties. So I'd just like to point out two quotes from the report, as I'm sure the panel is all across these two. However, these are the two most poignant points in relation to my submission here. The assessment finds that the issues are unacceptable and the design proposal would lead to an unacceptable precedent, will cause significant erosion of the streetscape. And then secondly, the submitted demolition methodology does not adequately address the concerns of the common wall. I think and common roof with 22 Jensen Avenue. I think those two things speak for themselves in that the recommendations from Mr. Wilmot and Mr. Magistrale should be upheld. I think anything to the contrary of that, if I could say with absolute respect, would be most unsympathetic to my parents' property and to 22 Jensen Avenue. So look in the absence of any further points apart from my our support of the recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions the panel might have, any insights I can provide.
Thank you. Does the panel have any questions of Mr. Cosgrove?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tony Moody indicated that he was speaking in the Land Environment Court, so he won't be here today.
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. The next speaker I have is the applicant, Lance Paneras.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very.
Thank you.
And you're the applicant from Windcrest Group.
Correct. Yes, that's right. So I'm the general manager for Windcrest and chosen representative for our client today, Dr. Michaela Skopek. I think I just wanted to thank you for letting us discuss this matter today at the panel. I just wanted to ask quickly: has the panel reviewed the submission that we provided on Monday?
Yes.
Has that been provided to you?
Speaking for myself, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start by saying that from the outset, we recognise some of the comments and the work that's gone into the submissions and the findings in the report by Damien Wilmot and Council up to this stage. From the outset, it's been our client's simple want to build herself a brand new house, and that is all that she's after to do here. She's more than willing and consenting to incorporating changes into the development and to get this over the line fundamentally in the end. I'll start by just saying that the 19 unique submissions that we've received, I mean, we find that a little bit unfair to say that there's unique submissions. 9 of those submissions have come from the adjoining neighbour. We understand why those have been received, but to come from one particular dwelling, respectively, is a little bit harsh to say that they're all unique. One has been a positive submission as well, and the other submissions have been noted as well. Since those submissions have been received, we have not had any chance to answer any RFI, any questions from the council planner or any representative from council at all on the application to date. Of the key items or reasons for refusal that have been listed, I believe that 1, 2, 3, 4 of those are quite minor in that the biodiversity, the setbacks, the fencing and the solar access could all be easily mitigated or altered or changed by way of amending documentation. The biodiversity is a very minor change on the landscaping plan, which will need to be incorporated. The setbacks we have indicated in our submission on Monday that we are more than happy to alter the rear setback and also the porch and balcony that is currently proposed, to remove those to allow further solar access as well. And the fencing as well is a minor non-compliance in that can also be easily addressed by way of an amended landscaping plan. In terms of the design excellence, again, we strongly disagree with the finding of the council in this matter. Wingcrest has actually been involved in a development of this kind previously, and that development went extremely well. It was located in Brighton Le Sands, not in this council. We understand that. However, it is a thriving dwelling now, and the adjoining dwelling to this particular property had absolutely no fundamental structural issues or changes whatsoever. In fact, that dwelling has also, the adjoining dwelling has also now added a first floor addition to that as well.
Mr. Paneris, I'm going to have to ask you to wind up. You're well over time.
Okay. Well, basically, to the point, we don't agree with the council's findings, and we would find it, find it fair to further amend and discuss any potential changes to the assessment so that the refusal is not upheld.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the panel to Mr. Paneris?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Paneris, for your submission. Are these other people from your group available for questions if asked? Is that right? That's Suleiman Burkick and Kylie Wright.
They are, if requested, they are here to speak if needed.
Right. Well, I don't know that we need them at the moment, but thank them for making themselves available, will you?
Thank you. No worries.
Thank you. All right. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application for 24 Jensen Avenue and notify our decision on the council website.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. This is my first WLPP meeting. I'm not sure what procedure is in this respect, so I'm just asking whether I'm able to ask questions in response, or if this is just a consultative nature.
Thank you for drawing that to my attention. No, our protocols don't allow people to cross-question.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Go on for a very long time and
not
necessarily productive. So, but thank you
Yes.
for asking me.
Just checking. No problem.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision accordingly. And that brings us to 30 Tower Street. And the speaker I have is Mr. George Caravanis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am speaking on behalf of the applicant and in support of the application. And I have with me via separate video link, Mr. Jesse M. Salim, who's the architect, and Mr. Dean Frisk, who's also the applicant. And both of those are available to answer any questions should there be from the panel.
Thank you.
Now, we do, of course, concur with the assessment report, the recommendation, and we don't wish to challenge any of the conditions. I suppose the key thing that I'd like to raise is that the proposal, as you would have read through the report, is permissible in the R3 zone, of course, complies with the maximum development standard and maximum height standards under the LEP. You'll also see that the proposal fully complies with all the envelope controls in the DCP, being front, side, rear setbacks, wall height, landscaped area, and so on. Therefore, you'll find that the proposal comprises a building envelope, a building form and scale that is anticipated by the council controls and indeed consistent with the desired future character of the area. The assessment report has indicated that some impacts are inevitable given that the site is currently occupied by a single dwelling. However, these impacts are a function of a compliant building envelope and indeed a compliant interface with these neighbours. In fact, the proposal is merely only 2 stories, a 2-storey compliant building in an R3 zone with a 12.5 metre height limit. The council officer's report clearly articulates that the proposal is appropriate in terms of its relation to its neighbours, and on this basis, it's of course acceptable in terms of view loss and overshadowing, as you'll see in the report. That's all I need to say at this stage. Members of the panel, we feel that the proposal is appropriate for the site and the locality, and indeed worthy of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Caravanis. Does the panel have any questions for Mr. Caravanis?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Caravanis.
Thank you.
And does the panel wish to hear from the architect or applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you. But thank them for standing by. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. We go then next door to 32 Tower Street, Vaucluse. And the first speaker I have is Irene Malamas.
Hi, thank you. I'll just turn my video on. Hi, thanks for the opportunity.
Hello.
To speak.
You're Irene Malamas?
Malamas, yes.
Malamas,
Right.
yeah.
All good.
And you live in 5 Dock, but do you have an interest in Tower Street?
Correct. I own unit number 12 at 26 to 28 next door.
Okay.
So I know you're speaking now about 32, but I have concerns about both developments, 30 and 32.
Go ahead, bearing in mind your time limit. But
I understand. I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
Yeah.
So I've got unit number 12, which is on the 3rd level of the flats next door, and in the middle. I reviewed the report and noticed that there were no photos that show the impact of the view loss on my property, my unit number 12. You've taken photos from some of the other units. I believe mine is going to be the most impacted by loss of views. And I don't really understand how the view can be shared. I understand there is a priority on view sharing. I don't understand how the view will be shared. I think I'm going to completely lose my view, but I don't see anything that shows me the impact on my property. So that is my concern.
Which is the number of the unit again?
Unit number 12 on level 3.
Number 12, level 3.
Yeah, and so it has a direct, it's not an angle. The ocean view is like directed in front. So the way it looks to me is that the new development is going to be in my direct line of sight from the balcony and from the living areas.
Okay.
So I don't see how the view can be shared from that aspect. It's basically, I'm going to lose the view and the new property is going to get the view.
I understand what your submission is.
Yeah.
Yes, is there anything else you wanted to say?
That is all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from members of the panel?
No, thank you.
Yeah, just one, Mr. Chair, to Irene. Your unit, you said, is located on the top floor of the adjoining flat building. Is it towards Tower Street, in the middle, or towards the rear? I'm just looking.
No, the middle. So it's next door to unit 11. You've got some photos of unit 11, which is the corner unit. Mine is next to that one.
Okay, so would you not have a view to the southeast?
No, because it's the corner there. No. South, I don't know which way is southeast, sorry, from my, if it's looking to the right or looking to the left, it would be the other units. To the right, towards like unit 11, I can't see what the impact, well, I don't know, because I can't tell what the impact's going to be.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah.
Located in the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malamus, for your
Thank you.
Submission. The next speaker I have is George Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you can see me.
Yes, yes. And you're the architect for the applicant.
That's correct. I'm the applicant and architect, technically. Thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. I think the panel will appreciate that number 30 and 32 are and applications that really have to be assessed together. In that spirit, I'd like to just thank the owners and the architect of number 30 for working with us very comprehensively in order for us to be able to come up with a scheme that really works. I think it's important to understand that developments on semis really do require a high level of cooperation. We support the report and accept all the conditions that have been imposed, and acknowledge also that we made the amendments that Kylie and her staff recommended in order to satisfy some of the concerns that they had during the assessment process. I'd like to just make one comment with regard to views, and I acknowledge the previous speaker, but Mr. Brennan is correct in his suggestion that there are tangential views, lateral views to the southeast from all the top floor balconies, which will provide more than sufficient sharing of the ocean views. To that end, I believe that that together with Kylie's actual inspection of the property would confirm that we've been able to achieve view sharing in an appropriate manner. Other than that, just one minor point of clarification. On the previous DA, because we acted jointly, the applicant used our photo montage, which in fact has been superseded by the fact that we actually moved the upper level back. So just for the point of clarification, we didn't want the panel to be misled by that photo montage, which actually is on the cover of the architectural drawings for number 30. Other than that, I commend the report to the panel, and I'm happy to answer any questions should you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Does the panel have any questions of this gentleman?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Benson. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll adjourn and consider this matter and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the close of the public meeting at 1:05. I'll close the public meeting with thanks to all of the submitters.